To make this comic strip called Piled Higher and Deeper. And so how this all started for me was first, there was this advertisement in the student newspaper calling for comics from students. And I remember thinking at the time that, you know, there are all these stories about PhD students that you really don't hear anywhere else. Right? In popular culture, there's all these movies and TV shows about policemen, and lawyers, and doctors. I mean, real doctors. But you never see anything about PhD students. And so I remember thinking at the time that, you know, who is this strange creature called the PhD student? What's going on inside of their complex and complicated psychology? It turned out that apparently it's not that complicated. Very simple. And I mean in the sense that, you know, most of the PhD students that I knew were these kind of crazy, eccentric, obsessive stereotypes that you see in popular culture and movies and TV shows all of the time. You know, most of the PhD students that I knew were really just kind of regular people, you know. They were mostly just trying to survive getting your PhD. And so that's what the comics were about. They were about surviving those one-on-one meetings with your professor, surviving the begging that you have to do, surviving being a teaching assistant, dealing with those annoying undergraduates. No offense to the 5 of you. Yeah, also surviving those late night homework and problem project sessions. What you can afford in terms of housing. And then, as you think I mentioned, actually, also that warm feeling you get when you have to explain to your parents. Explain to your parents why in your mid to late 20s you're still in school. You're not going to be a real doctor. The comics were also about grad student etiquette. You should never ask a PhD student. Also, oral examinations and qualifying examinations. Good times. And then eventually other characters started appearing, including Cecilia, one of the brave 5 to 10% of women in computer science or electrical engineering. Who's often the only woman in the classroom, but I think like many of us often have to admit to ourselves that we're just geeks. And we have the token humanities graduate student, Pedro, who's always protesting something. And then of course we have that guy. That guy that everybody seems to have in their departments, at least in the US. You know, the guy who's been there longer than anyone can remember. I hear you're limited to 4 years, right? 4 years. years, and then that's it, right? So nobody here has been here longer than 4 years. It's okay, you don't have to raise your hand. Yeah, Mike Sleckery, whose job it is to educate the new PhD students in the way of the PhD. So exactly, money, a social life of shade, a PhD student needs not such things. So this was actually said to me my first year. By this older student called Mike. So I don't make a lot of this stuff up. And then Mike, I think like many of us, you not only have to manage your professors and your advisor, but you also have to manage your significant others. And their expectations. And so I kept drawing these comics, right, about PhD students, and people seem to kind of like them. I think not just because they could identify with some of the characters, or they could identify with some of the situations in the comics. I think people kind of like the comics because the subtext of the comics, the secret message of the comics, was always